Hey guys, tonight we slip into the hushed corridors of an Edo-era Japanese inn, where the earliest light shivers through paper lanterns and your senses lean in, curious. You're stepping into a world that unfolds in measured breaths, where every creak of the sliding screen and every waft of steamed rice counts. You might think you know tea, but you have absolutely no idea what peace feels like at dawn, until you do. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments, I want to know where you're tuning in from. Now, wind down and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You awaken to a soft lantern glow, the kind that makes every shadow feel like it's exhaling. The tatami mat beneath you is cool but forgiving, and you can almost hear the breath of the inn settling around you. A single paper lantern flickers outside the polished G screen, its amber halo dancing over the earthen plaster walls. You stretch, feeling the fabric of your yukata whisper against your skin. This isn't a pressed shirt breakfast at the office or a hurried gulp of instant coffee, it's a ceremony of waking, a prelude to ritual. The Japanese tea ceremony, or chanoyu, was formalized by Sen no Reiki in the late 16th century, embedding philosophy into every gesture and elevating a humble beverage to fine art. You sit up just as a thin draft coaxes the lantern's flame to sway. The world here moves on its own rhythm, one you're about to learn by heart. A faint click marks the shifting of wood as the corridor door slides open. You catch the scent of smoked cedar, mingled with the distant promise of pine smoke from the hearth. It's almost unnerving how quiet everything is, like sound has been asked to bow respectfully in the hallway. Beyond the screen, the inn's common area lies empty, save for a single iron kettle perched over a low hearth. The kettle's curved handle curves upward like a bowstring pulled tight, waiting for release. You can almost feel the latent energy humming within its cast iron walls. And yes, that's exactly the sound. The silence is so complete that you can hear the kettle's stillness. You stand, letting your feet find the slit of the jita rack, and pad across the polished floor toward the hearth. Each step feels ceremonial, like you're advancing through a dim proscenium toward a play you've only just remembered you're in. Outside, a rooster crows somewhere, but inside, tradition takes center stage. A wooden plaque above the hearth bears a single kanji that could mean calm, or maybe harmony. Either way, it's giving you the side eye, don't mess this up. You crouch before the hearth, hands folded politely in your lap, and you wait. Wait for what? You're not sure. Maybe for the attendant's knock, or for the kettle's first hiss of steam. Maybe for that moment when you realize that this isn't just tea, you're about to drink centuries of intention. A panel slides quietly, and a lacquered figure steps in, your attendant, or chi. She moves with the grace of a heron in dawnlight. Her kimono's sleeves brush the tatami like faint whiskers, and her gaze is downcast in perfect humility. You feel your own eyes widen. Despite the chill in the air, heat pools at the base of your skull. This is your audience, and you're about to perform. She pauses before the hearth, lowers her head in a bow so precise it seems carved from wood, then reaches for the kettle's lid. A hiss escapes as she lifts it, and you see plumes of steam curl upward like restless spirits finally granted release. The water inside has been simmering since before the sun raised its head above the roofs, and you can almost hear it think. Water's boiling point at sea level is 100 degrees Celsius, yet for matcha prep, it's gently held at about 80 degrees Celsius to preserve that bright vegetal edge. It's a scientific trick as old as accidental discovery. Your own breath catches at that sound, and you notice something you didn't expect, the slightest fragrance of fresh pine mingling with the steam. It teases at your memory, campfires, shrine festivals, wood smoke on a damp morning. You realize you've been holding your breath, waiting, and the moment you exhale, you feel part of the ritual. Then she sets the lid aside on a small cloth, its surface gleaming like a raven's wing. You watch as she gathers a bamboo ladle, chishaku, and dips it into the kettle's mouth, scooping precisely 3 scoops of clear water into a dark ceramic bowl. Even this simple act feels like choreography. Every movement is measured, every glance is reverent, and you are here to see it, to learn it, and to carry it forward, one inhale at a time. You're dozing again, soft murmur of sliding screens still echoing in your mind, when a gentle knock taps at your fusuma. It's that exact, unhurried shō-kon rhythm that feels like a metronome set to calm. You blink up at the paper door, the lantern's glow now a bruised orange as dawn inches toward day. The chies signal is neither brusque nor overly deferential, it's hospitality woven with centuries of protocol. You pause mid-stretch, wondering if you dreamed it, then slide the door open on silent runners. There she stands again, this time with a folded fan tucked into her obi, her kimono patterned with tiny chrysanthemums that almost pulse in the dim light. Her bow is seamless, head inclining just enough to bridge the polite distance between servant and honored guest. You remember that during the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, inns and tea houses refined these rituals to reinforce social hierarchy while nurturing communal calm. Even the knock itself was standardized at many establishments, 3 soft taps, a brief pause, then 2 more, so guests and neighbors knew exactly who was calling and why. You offer a hesitant return bow, the fabric of your yukata shifting like water around your legs. She steps aside, revealing the corridor beyond, its polished wood glimmering with the first light. The wooden floor creaks only when it chooses to speak, as if apologizing for interrupting its own solemnity. A cool breeze drifts in, carrying whispers of bamboo groves and incense that stills your mind. You follow her lead, each footfall deliberate, no rush, no clamor. "Good morning," she murmurs in a voice so soft you lean in, as if strain betrays genuine interest. You can't make out the exact words, language here is half gesture, but you feel the warmth of welcome. She gestures to a low cushioned stool set against the alcove wall. "Please," her posture insists, though politeness forbids her from saying more. You settle onto the cushion, knees folding inward, and wait. The corridor's oil lamps have been replaced by natural light now warming the tatami. You catch a glimpse of sliding screens further down, their rice paper panes mottled with dew patterns. A courtesan rumored to have prized such windows for meditative views once stayed here. It said she composed haiku on the spot when droplets formed perfect circles. You smirk at the thought, nothing like a poetic guest to upstage breakfast. Your attendant steps away and returns with a lacquered tray bearing a small woven basket. Inside lie freshly grilled rice crackers, senbei, and a delicate dish of candied chestnut. It's customary to offer a sweet before bitter matcha to temper your palate. The earliest recorded tea manuals from the Genroku era mention such pairings as an art form. Today's inns still honor that lineage with unwavering precision. You lift a cracker, its surface glinting with soy glaze, and bite down, the crunch echoing softly in the hush. The sweetness slides home, and you feel yourself leveling into the moment. She kneels before you, placing the tray between your feet. The baskets and dishes seem to hover, weightless, as if caught in a moment of suspended grace. You notice the faintest scent of sesame oil lingering on the senbei, an unconventional touch that some innkeepers introduced to differentiate their fare. Historians still debate how far such regional flourishes strayed from classic tea etiquette. But here you find the balance enchanting rather than irreverent. While you taste the chestnut's honeyed grain, the chi withdraws again, reappearing with a small scroll of calligraphy. She unrolls it on the floor beside your cushion. The charcoal brushstrokes form a single, meditative phrase, often a seasonal poem or a Zen koan meant to focus your mind. Today's inscription speaks of morning dew and silent mountains, a deliberate cue to harmonize your thoughts with nature's gentle waking. You trace the characters with your eyes, savoring the brush's texture and the space between the strokes. A quirk you'd never have guessed, some masters intentionally smudged a corner of the scroll to remind observers that imperfection is inherent beauty. You notice your attendant's hands, slender and steady, never hovering nor rushed, an embodiment of wabi-sabi in motion. The art of hospitality here hinges on neither grand gestures nor flat servility, but on this precise timing: knock, wait, present, retreat, return, each step alternately guiding and receding so you feel both led and free. You can't help but marvel at how a simple tap against paper can carry such nuance. "Are you comfortable?" she finally voices, sliding in just enough English for travelers in these final days of the shogunate's isolation policy. You nod, cheeks warming with gratitude. It's one of the few concessions made for foreign guests, who were still rare and often mistrusted. Yet the inn's reputation for blending smooth politeness with unspoken serenity makes it a favored stop for the occasional Dutch merchant or Chinese envoy. The presence of outsiders occasionally whispers through the corridors in low-stakes gossip, a reminder that even the most insular traditions adapt. Your chestnut and senbei vanishing, you sit in gentle silence. The scroll's message sinks in as the light grows steadier. You feel your heartbeat slow, attuning to the ebb and flow of ritual time. No guardrails, no deadlines, just the measured cadence of intention. Then, as if cued by some invisible conductor, she grants a final, near imperceptible nod and retreats through the sliding door, leaving it ajar just enough to let the morning in. The knock has done its work. You're awake, alert, and poised to witness the next act of this age-old theater. You realize that in this simple knock and the attendant's quiet choreography, you're learning more than protocol, you're internalizing a philosophy. In the stillness between taps, you discover that hospitality isn't a transaction but an invitation to embody calm. And sometimes the softest knock can echo louder than trumpets. You sit cross-legged on the tatami, still tasting the sweet crackle of senbei, when the sliding door whispers open again. A lacquered tray appears first, its deep ebony sheen catching the morning light like a pool of silent ink. Next, a second tray in russet red, its edges trimmed in thin gold lines that form delicate waves. You lean forward, curiosity stirring in your chest. These aren't just serving platters, they're statements of intention. The chi kneels and places the trays before you, one after the other, each landing with a barely perceptible sigh. You study the black tray first. It's heavy for its size, as if it carries in its weight the centuries of Japanese lacquerware tradition, urushi lacquer that artisans have been perfecting since at least the Jaimin period, over 500 years ago. The surface is so smooth it seems liquid, yet you know it's hardened sap layered in dozens of coats. Your fingertip hovers an inch above it before you dare to touch. You're afraid your skin might leave a mark on something so meticulously crafted. Then you spot the bamboo scoop, chishaku, resting in a custom groove carved into the red tray. It's slender, graceful, almost cerebral in appearance, as though it understands the gravity of its task, to bridge the bowl and the caddy, to measure the perfect pinch of matcha. Unlike Western measuring spoons that shout precision, this one whispers it. Legend says that some chishaku were carved from bamboo that grew near sacred Shinto shrines and were believed to ward off evil spirits, an eccentric belief that apparently survived in a few mountain temple workshops. You imagine a bamboo plant quivering in a temple courtyard, absorbing spiritual vibes, only to be chopped down and whisked into an in-storage room centuries later. You bow your head, remembering how the scroll's brushstrokes reminded you that imperfection is inherent beauty. These trays, too, bear subtle irregularities, tiny ripples in the lacquer, a barely noticeable dip in one tray's rim. That's not a flaw, it's wabi-sabi incarnate, a quiet reminder that perfection is a polite pretense. You place your palm on the red tray's edge, feeling its warmth, a sign that it's been handled recently, loved and used, not just polished and shelved. On the black tray sits a small natsum, the tea caddy. Its round form resembles a baby bird's egg, matte and velvety to the touch. You draw it closer, brushing your thumb over its surface. Mainstream tea ceremonies of the Edo era used natsum predominantly for thin tea, reserving sturdier iron containers for thicker blends. The natsum's simplicity frames the vibrant green powder you'll meet soon, like a minimalist gallery waiting for its star exhibit. Next to the natsum is the choran, a tea bowl. This one is unassuming, earthy clay, glazed in mottled gray with a single crackle line running from rim to base. It's not a defect, it's a deliberate aesthetic choice, echoing the philosophy that beauty lies in the unexpected. You recall hearing that some bowls were passed down through generations of tea masters, each nick and chip accumulating like faint echoes of past ceremonies. You wonder if this very bowl once cradled matcha for a high-ranking samurai or perhaps a ronin testing his resolve. Between the natsum and the chorin rests a silk cloth, fukusa, dyed a deep indigo. This cloth will cleanse the utensils, not just physically but spiritually, purifying them for their sacred work. You trace the fabric's weave with your eyes, marveling at how something so ordinary in other contexts becomes charged with symbolism here. It's a reminder that even routine actions, folding, draping, wiping, are part of the ceremony's choreography. The chi motions for you to examine the implements. You pick up the bamboo scoop first. Its weight is feather-light, but the resistance of the hardened bamboo under your thumb feels almost like resistance training for your senses. You slide the scoop's curved tip against the natsum's rim, hearing a soft scrape that resonates through the quiet room. It's a sound you didn't realize you were longing for, the prelude to creation. You draw out exactly one scoop of shimmering powder, watch it dance in the air, and let it settle in the bowl. You glance at the tray again, 2 trays, each holding different tools, yet sharing the same restrained elegance. You can't help but feel you're witnessing a performance with no audience but yourself. The tools are cast members, each waiting for its cue. The chishaku whispers, the natsum hums, the chorin sighs under the weight of destiny. You almost expect the fukusa to unfurl itself in a grand finale. A quirky detail catches your eye. The tray's underside is stamped with a tiny crest, a stylized iris blossom surrounded by geometric shapes. You learn that some inns used these marks not just to brand their service but to signal which tea lineage they followed. It was like a secret handshake among tea aficionados, a way to brag quietly without saying a word. Even now, in this hushed moment, you feel like you're part of an exclusive club, a club that values silence as much as flavor. The chi retreats, leaving you alone with the trays. You bow your head out of instinct, as if thanking the tools themselves. You place your palms on the tatami, lift your gaze, and see garden light filtering through the screens behind you. The trays gleam softly, promising rituals yet to come. Every utensil here carries weight, of history, of craft, of spiritual purpose, and you're beginning to understand that in Chinoyu, objects are more than objects. They're carriers of intention, bridges between souls. You slide the trays aside, making space for what comes next. The utensils have made their entrance, now it's your turn to interact, to whisk, to sip, to become part of a centuries-old dialogue. And yes, you'll remember this unveiling long after the last drop of matcha slides past your lips. You ease your weight forward on the tatami, tracing the chorin's rough edge with your finger. It's still warm from the sunbeam creeping across the floor, a slow golden tongue that licks the room inch by inch. The light catches on specks of green powder now resting inside the bowl, matcha, ground finer than talc, vibrant as moss, and worth its weight in time. You tilt the chorin slightly, watching the powder settle into the base like stardust finding its gravity. Now, finally, the whisk arrives. The chi returns once more, this time carrying a slender bamboo whisk, chasen, nestled inside a small basket lined with linen. She places it gently beside the bowl, angled just so, as if the whisk were a precious relic rather than a tool. And maybe, in this room, it is. You lean closer. The chasen bristles curve inward in a delicate spiral, each tine carved by hand from a single stalk of winter-hardened bamboo. You learn that some master artisans, particularly in Tokoyama, passed down this technique through bloodlines, refusing to document their methods, every whisk born of muscle memory and sheer instinct. You can't help but respect the secrecy. Something about hidden knowledge makes it feel warmer, cozier. Even as you pick it up, the chasen feels deceptively light, but it flexes ever so slightly, like a cat stretching after a nap. You remember that its job is not to beat or stir but to invite the matcha into being. There's no violence in this tool, only rhythm. You settle your hands in your lap and take a breath. This is the part that's both deeply mundane and sublimely spiritual. It's just a drink, but also not. The Japanese word for tea, ocha, seems to shrink under the weight of what this process represents. You're not just preparing a beverage, you're aligning with centuries of ritual where even the most humble peasant and the most exalted daimyo would have paused to watch powder swirl into foam. The chi kneels again, never once making direct eye contact, and pours hot water from a cast iron kettle into a hishaku, a long-handled ladle made of bamboo. You admire the way her hand hovers just above the rising steam, perfectly still even as the heat curls around her fingers. One ladleful of steaming water is tipped into the choran. It hits the green powder with a tiny hiss, like matcha waking from a dream. You watch it bloom into a swirling green galaxy. She bows again, then shifts back, waiting. This is your part. You grip the chasen lightly and bring it down into the liquid with a soft plop. For a moment, you hesitate. How fast should you move? How deep should it go? The chi remains motionless, leaving you to explore, not instruct. You remember reading that the M motion is the key, whisk not in circles, but in zigzags, swift and purposeful. You begin. At first, it's chaos. The powder clumps, the foam resists, and you're sure you're doing it wrong. But then you find a rhythm, wrist bouncing lightly, flicking like the wings of a butterfly caught in slow motion. Tiny bubbles begin to form, then multiply, then settle into a uniform froth the color of jade. You feel oddly victorious, as though you've just cracked a safe or hit a bullseye. It's ridiculous how satisfying it is, and then comes the smell, earthy, almost grassy, but cleaner than dirt and sharper than hay. It's a scent that doesn't quite belong to food. It feels more like a place. Some travelers in the Edo period described the smell of matcha as the scent of quiet temples and wet stone. You inhale it like memory, you stop whisking, lift the chasen, and admire your work. The foam is thick and even, with one small air bubble drifting along the edge like a lost ship. You consider popping it, then decide against it. Let the bubble stay. It's part of the story now. The chi approaches again, this time not to help but to observe. There's no judgment in her gaze, only a quiet pride, like a teacher watching a student finish their first ink painting. You gently rotate the choran with both hands, aligning the front of the bowl to face outward. Not for taste, but for beauty. Etiquette insists the guest must drink from the back of the bowl, so the most decorated side remains visible, a symbolic nod to humility. You smile. Even the sipping comes with subtext. You bow slightly, then lift the choran. It's heavier now, the weight of the liquid anchoring it. You bring it to your lips, pausing for a heartbeat. The first sip is warm, creamy, slightly bitter, but not aggressively so. It rolls over your tongue like velvet and leaves a whisper of sweetness behind. It's not trying to impress. It's just being exactly what it is, and then the second sip, deeper, rounder. The foam kisses your upper lip and lingers a little, like a flirt. You feel something loosen in your chest, some knot of modern urgency untying. Maybe it's the caffeine. Maybe it's the placebo effect of centuries telling you this is sacred. Or maybe it's just nice to sit here, doing nothing but tasting green water that took an entire room of tools and timing to create, and you laugh a little at yourself. You, a person who once microwaved coffee in a paper cup, are now reverently sipping matcha in a historic inn. Whispering apologies to a teacup. Oh, how far you've come, a whisper of wind shifts the screen behind you. The garden is brighter now, filtered through fresh leaves and pale morning sun. Somewhere outside, a bird chirps once, as if on cue. And you sit there, matcha in hand, a little foam on your lip, and think, this is a ceremony. Not because of the steps. but because of the stillness, and yes, you're going to remember the whisk. It's not just a tool. It's a tiny bamboo orchestra conducting serenity. You cradle the empty choran in your hands, thumbs resting along its warm rim, the last whisper of matcha still lingering on your tongue. You feel oddly grateful. Not in a grand, epiphanic way. Just quietly. The kind of gratitude that seeps into your bones and makes you feel like maybe, just maybe, you've been living too fast for too long. But there's no rush to process that now. You set the bowl gently back onto the lacquered tray, and the soft click it makes sounds like punctuation, an ellipsis more than a full stop, that she bows again, taking the choran into her hands with a reverence that borders on the theatrical. But nothing here is performance. It's all deliberate, saturated with meaning. She rises and glides out through the shōji, and you're left once again with silence, and a growing awareness that there's still more to this ritual than you realized. You look to the corner of the room where another attendant is now placing a small incense burner. Ceramic, in the shape of a good, with a spiral of smoke curling out of its spout. The scent is soft, woody, with a faint trace of clove. Not overwhelming, but grounding. It coils around you like a cat winding between your legs. You breathe it in and feel the last bits of distraction loosen from your shoulders. It's now that the Inzo-kami, the female head of household, enters. She's older, elegant, wrapped in layers of subdued silk. Not a word is exchanged. You bow. She bows. And she kneels to begin the second, more formal phase of the tea service. What you've just experienced was a prelude. A warm-up. This, what's about to unfold, is the real heart of Chinoyu. The part where silence does most of the talking, she unfolds a fresh fukusa, this one dyed in an ochre so rich it looks almost edible. Slowly, methodically, she begins to purify the utensils. Not because they're dirty. They've already been cleaned. But because the act of cleaning is itself a declaration, we begin again, with intention. The chasen is lifted, turned, examined. Then the chishaku. Each movement follows a choreography older than any one generation. You watch her hands closely. The turns, the pauses, the delicate tugs of the cloth, they're mesmerizing. Not flashy. Not dramatic. But so smooth they almost disappear into time, and while you're watching, something surprising happens. Your own breathing syncs with her pacing. Slower. Deeper. More present. Your thoughts stop ping-ponging around. Even your inner monologue softens into background hum. And this is no coincidence. Historians still debate whether the ritualization of Chinoyu during the Edo era was meant primarily for spiritual introspection or social control, but in moments like this, the lines blur. What's clear is that your brain has stopped craving distraction. You're content to just sit and breathe and watch someone wipe down a bamboo scoop like it's the final step before launching a spaceship. Here's something quirky. Certain Edo-era inns trained their tea attendants to walk on the balls of their feet to keep the tatami from squeaking during ceremonies. Some even placed thin slivers of paper under the floor mats to dampen sound. You chuckle softly, imagining some overzealous apprentice tiptoeing like a ninja just to serve tea without disrupting the vibe. Commitment, thy name is silence. Back in the moment, the Okami lifts the choran once more. This time, she rotates it slightly, presenting the best face of the bowl to you. She bows, and with both hands, offers it forward. You accept it slowly, as though it might vanish if you move too fast. This is not your matcha. This is hers. Made by practiced hands with exacting care. The water used has been cooled slightly to preserve the flavor profile of the tea, hot, but not boiling. The powder was sifted 3 times to avoid bitterness. She's using koicha, a thick, syrupy form of matcha used in formal tea gatherings. It's not just foam and froth. It's serious. Concentrated. Almost medicinal in its richness, you lift the bowl, and this time, your sip is more deliberate. The texture is, wow. Like warm paint, in the best possible way. Heavy. Silky. Bitter at first, then unfolding into something rounder, more earthy. It clings to your tongue and demands that you pay attention. You do. Every molecule feels purposeful. You take another slow sip, rotating the bowl slightly between each one, just as the etiquette suggests. And as you drink, you find yourself wondering how many people have done exactly this, right here, on this tatami, in this same exact silence. Did they also feel like time stopped ticking for a moment? Or did they sit like you, pretending to understand all the unspoken rules, hoping they weren't disrespecting 1,000 years of tradition by turning the bowl a few degrees too far? Another detail, during the Edo period, koicha wasn't just about flavor, it was a test of character. Guests often shared the same bowl as a symbolic act of trust and equality. Can you imagine that today? Passing a single drink among a group of near strangers, no sanitizer in sight? Back then, it was an offering of intimacy. Now, it might get you politely escorted out of a coffee shop. You finish the last sip. The chorin is nearly empty, but its weight lingers. You bow once more and return the bowl to its tray. The okami accepts it with grace, and again, the silence fills in like water. It's not awkward. It's actually luxurious. Silence here doesn't demand anything of you. It just lets you be. And in a world that constantly yells for your attention, that feels decadent, you notice now that your heartbeat has slowed. Your limbs feel heavier, more grounded. The room seems quieter, though nothing has changed. The ceremony is nearly complete, but the sense of presence it brings? That sticks around, and maybe that's the real purpose. Not the matcha. Not the tools. Not even the centuries of history stitched into each step. It's the fact that you paused long enough to notice. You sit quietly, still tasting the last trace of koicha clinging to the roof of your mouth like a final echo. The okami has withdrawn, the chorin has been carried away, and the incense has thinned into a fading memory. But you're not dismissed, not yet. The ceremony isn't over. Not really, because now comes the part you weren't expecting, reflection. Not structured or spoken, but simply allowed. You stay kneeling on the cushion, legs starting to gently ache, hands resting in your lap, while time slows into an almost syrupy consistency. This is a pause with no countdown. Outside, the garden murmurs with low wind. A single pine creaks. Somewhere beyond the screen wall, a sparrow fusses over something invisible. These small, natural sounds become characters in the quiet play unfolding around you. You begin to understand why so many Edo period inns built their tea rooms to face miniature gardens, not for beauty, but for balance. The garden isn't decoration. It's dialogue. You take another breath. And now, something subtle shifts. The hostess returns, not with tea, but with sweets. Yes, wagashi. The companion to matcha, the counterpoint to its bitter intensity. She places a small lacquer tray before you, and atop it rests a single, delicate confection. It looks like a tiny sunrise sculpted from sugar, pastel pink and pale gold, shaped like a chrysanthemum caught in bloom. Edible poetry. You almost don't want to disturb it, but of course, you do. You lift it gently with a wooden pick, kuramoji, and let it rest on your tongue. It melts faster than expected, all sweetness and silence. The texture is smooth, slightly gelatinous, like a whisper of jelly wrapped in soft cloud. It's made from nerakiri dough, a mix of sweetened white bean paste and glutinous rice flour, kneaded until it holds shape like silk holds a breeze. Wagashi wasn't always so refined. Early Edo sweets were coarser, shaped crudely by hand, often filled with surprise chunks of chestnut or red bean. But by the mid-1600s, as tea culture spread beyond the noble classes and into high-end inns and merchant homes, wagashi evolved. Artisans began using intricate molds and imported dyes, some even crushed safflowers for pink or used arrowroot starch for extra shine. These weren't just desserts. They were status symbols. There's something poetic, almost funny, about a culture so meticulous that even dessert must bow to season and ceremony. In spring, plum blossoms. In summer, fans and goldfish. In autumn, maple leaves. Right now, it's late spring. So you're given a flower that bloomed maybe just last week outside the window. Eat your environment. Reflect on its timing, you take another bite, and it hums through your taste buds, laced with that perfect counterbalance of sweetness to matcha's bite. There's a reason the tea comes first. Koicha primes your palate, the wagashi rewards it. As you chew, you notice how the room almost anticipates your next move. A fresh cloth has been placed beside you. Not a word was spoken, but somehow, everything you need just appears. This is no accident. Edo inns, especially the elite ryokan, were famous for a level of anticipatory service that bordered on clairvoyance. The staff trained for months to interpret subtle body cues, a glance, a shift in posture, the way a guest reached for their cup. They'd adjust everything from lighting to footstep rhythm without breaking the illusion of invisibility. One curious tidbit, some inns reportedly kept logs, secret guest diaries, not just for reservations, but for preferences. If a merchant liked sweet over salty, or had a habit of stirring tea clockwise, the staff would remember. You wouldn't even know you were being observed, just that everything always felt just right. Kinda like now. You clean your hands with the cloth, a gentle swipe, and fold it back neatly. As if on cue, another sliding door opens, not the one that you used, but a smaller panel behind you. From it, an attendant places a small ceramic container at your side, a natsum, the lacquered tea caddy that once held the matcha powder. It's being shown to you, not because you'll use it, but because it's part of the aesthetic rhythm. Like credits rolling at the end of a film you love too much to leave. You admire the simplicity, deep black lacquer, a thin gold line of pine needles etched into its base. No one points out the detail, but you see it. That's enough. The attendant retrieves it after a respectful pause. And with a final bow, leaves the room. Now it's just you and the quiet again, and this, perhaps more than any other moment, is what defines the Edo-era tea experience, not the flavor, not the tools, not even the etiquette, but the aftertaste of being cared for in ways you didn't realize you needed. You've been brought to stillness without being asked to meditate. You've been moved without words. And your only job was to sit, sip, and soften. You can feel yourself slouching now, and you let it happen. No one's judging your posture. This isn't about discipline anymore. It's about settling. You lean slightly to one side, spine curving into the shape of contentment. Your eyes rest half closed. And for a moment, you swear the light in the room has dimmed on its own. It hasn't, of course. But your perception has shifted. Maybe this is what guests from the Edo period sought when they traveled for days to reach these inns, not just rest, but erasure. The temporary shedding of status, of burdens, of busy. In this tea room, there are no debts, no duties, no hierarchy. Just you, a bowl, a sweet, and the sound of wind finding its way through old paper screens, and somehow, that's enough. Your limbs are quieter now, heavy, but in a pleasant, weighted blanket sort of way. You shift slightly, easing off your knees and onto your hip with a small grunt. It's not the most elegant pose, but the room forgives you. In fact, it almost encourages the adjustment, as though this whole space was designed to make you exhale. The wagashi is gone, the tea is gone, and yet the ceremony gently carries on without them. The moment lingers. That's the thing about these Edo-era rituals, they don't just end. They dissolve. The edges blur until you can't quite tell when the formal becomes casual, when the host becomes invisible again, when the whole experience becomes memory instead of presence. You glance to the side and see a small, shallow wooden stand. Atop it rests a scroll, kakimono. You missed it earlier, maybe because your eyes were busy tracking the hands that whisked your matcha into that velvety swirl. Now, the calligraphy draws your gaze like a whisper in a dream. The brushwork is spare, bold, and yet gentle. The characters translate loosely to Ishigo Ichi, one time, one meeting. A phrase so famously associated with tea that it's practically a slogan for the experience. One moment, never to repeat. One gathering, never again exactly the same. Even if the people are the same. Even if the steps are followed to the letter. This moment is its own constellation. That's heavy, sure, but also freeing. You don't need to preserve it. You just need to live it. Back in Edo period inns, these scrolls were changed daily, sometimes hourly, to reflect the time of day, the weather, the guest status, or even the season's mood. A traveling daimyo might get a haiku about loyalty. A lonely scholar? Something about moonlight and longing. And for tea rooms, it was always subtle, always meant to echo through the ceremony rather than explain it. Here's a quirky aside for you. Some innkeepers reportedly developed a sense of humor with their scroll choices. During the annual Firefly festivals, one famous inn in Kyoto hung a kakimono that simply read, "Don't swap beauty." Cheeky and poetic. The kind of thing that makes you snort through your nose in the middle of an otherwise solemn event. You find yourself smiling at the thought. Even Edo Japan had its little inside jokes. Your eyes linger on the scroll for a while longer before drifting toward the window. The shōji screens are slightly parted now, and through the narrow slit you glimpse the garden more clearly. The moss looks impossibly soft, and there's a stone lantern nestled at an angle that feels like deliberate imperfection. Wabi-sabi are the appreciation of the flawed, the transient. The pine tree isn't symmetrical. The rocks aren't polished. And yet, everything feels more balanced than any pristine room you've ever been in. You start to wonder if there's something you're supposed to be doing now. But no. That's the trick of the modern mind, always hunting for the next step, the next checkbox. Here, the absence of action is the action. Just like in Edo Inn centuries ago, the moment after tea was often left deliberately unstructured. No lectures. No conversations. Just space. Back then, hosts designed these tea rooms using a principle called ma, the space between things. It's hard to describe, really. Not emptiness, but potential. Like the pause in music that makes the next note sweeter. Or the white space on a page that lets the words breathe. Right now, you're sitting inside ma. You're doing absolutely nothing, and somehow it feels full, but still, your mind can't help but wander a little. You think about the people who built this place. The carpenters who planed the wood so smooth it reflects light like still water. The apprentices who learned how to hang a kettle just so. The women who spent hours folding fukusa cloths without creasing them the wrong way. Generations of unnamed caretakers, all contributing to this exact moment you're now inhabiting. It's humbling, honestly. And a little odd to realize that hundreds of years ago, some tea guests may have sat exactly where you're sitting, slouched in the same spot, thinking the same thing. You notice something new now, the faintest sound of water. Somewhere beyond the outer wall, there's a bamboo shishiodoshi, those little water clocks that fill, tip, and clack back down to start again. It's subtle. Background noise. But once you hear it, you can't not hear it. The rhythm is patient. Not rushed. Fill, tip, thunk. Silence. Wait. Fill, tip, thunk. The kind of metronome your nervous system didn't know it needed. That sound wasn't just aesthetic during the Edo period. It had a purpose, to scare away deer from gardens. but tea houses adopted them for their subtle beauty and the pacing they introduced. You sit there listening to it and suddenly realize your thoughts have started moving to its rhythm. One at a time. No multitasking, thunk. You remember that you were supposed to check your messages, Phil, but you no longer care. Tip, you were going to reply to that email, weren't you, thunk, maybe tomorrow, and here's a thought that creeps up without warning. How often do you allow yourself to be this quiet? No music, no scrolling, no second screen attention span gymnastics. Just sitting. The tea ceremony hasn't just taught you about matcha. It's reminded you of your own edges. The places where you stop and the world begins. Where stimulus ends and silence can stretch, thunk, another beat passes. You're still here, and somehow, you don't want to be anywhere else. You blink slowly, lulled by the steady rhythm of the distant water clock. The tea, the sweet, the scroll, all have receded into the soft background of memory, leaving only stillness in their place. But even stillness, you realize, isn't static. It breathes. It ripples. And now, the next ripple arrives, the sound of sandals, soft, deliberate steps draw nearer, padded by the tatami floor. The okami returns, bowing as she enters, but she doesn't bring more tea or sweets. Instead, she carries something far simpler, an oshibari, a warm, damp cloth, folded precisely and placed with care on a small wooden tray. She bows once more, then silently retreats. The gesture is unmistakably humble. But it's not servile, it's a reminder that hospitality, at its best, is quiet reverence. You lift the oshibari and feel its heat radiate into your fingertips. You unfold it, and for a moment, just hold it in your palms. It smells faintly of citrus rind and cedar, a soft scent that would have made sense in any high-end Edo-era inn. The cloth is thicker than you expect, stitched by hand, likely reused hundreds of times, washed and folded to perfection. You press it gently to your face, it's a sensory reset. Warmth on your cheeks. Moisture seeping into tired pores. Like the world just got a little closer. In the Edo period, oshibari served a dual purpose, refreshment and transition. It was a signal. A cue to the guest that the most formal part of the visit was complete. But also, a gesture of cleansing, not just of hands, but of presence. To use it was to affirm that you'd been somewhere special. That you were now leaving that mental space behind, as you blot your neck and wrists, the simplicity of it strikes you. No flash. No flourish. Just a warm cloth and a quiet moment. Inns back then had whole routines built around these little things. Towels were steamed in wooden chests and stored with herbs depending on the season. In winter, yuzu peel. In summer, mint or pine. It was never just about function, it was mood crafting. Atmosphere, right down to the fingertips. You set the cloth down and instinctively stretch your arms above your head. Your spine lets out a few quiet pops in protest, and you exhale audibly, finally, permission to be a little ungraceful. You're not disrupting anything. In fact, you're falling perfectly into the rhythm of what's next. Now, a different attendant appears, male this time, tall, silent, almost statuesque in his navy blue robe. He enters without announcement, his every movement gliding like water down a smooth stone. He brings with him a rectangular wooden box. You know this isn't food, or tea, or another bowl. It's too flat. He places it in front of you and slides open the top panel with a quiet hiss. Inside, calligraphy supplies. A brush, a dish for ink, a scroll of fresh washi paper, still rolled. A personal invitation. No one says a word. This is your moment to leave something behind. It wasn't uncommon in Edo-era inns for guests of status, or simply those with something to say, to leave written impressions after a ceremony. A haiku. A single kanji character. A small sketch. Sometimes serious, sometimes silly. Think of it as a guest book, but with a brush instead of a pen and far more pressure to be poetic, you look at the tools. You hesitate. You are not a calligrapher, and yet you dip the brush into the inkstone, watching the black liquid bloom and swirl. You lift it and let your hand hover over the paper. What do you write? Something profound? Something sleep-deprived and ironic? Maybe just a doodle of the tea bowl with a tiny face drawn on it. Edo guests did that too. Historians have found whole scrolls with barely legible poetry followed by little sketches of foxes drinking matcha or monkeys wearing sandals. You make your mark. You don't overthink it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Remember the pine tree? The moss? The wabi-sabi? That imperfection is part of the ritual. You roll the scroll slowly and place it in the return box. Another bow to the invisible hosts. Another small goodbye outside. The day has deepened. The garden has changed color again, subtly. Shadows lengthen across the stones, and you notice how the moss now looks like crushed velvet instead of sponge. Light pools at new angles. A breeze lifts the edge of the shōji screen like it's nudging you forward. The male attendant reappears, silently collecting the box and your little scroll. He nods, a barely there smile cracking his otherwise serene face. It's the only recognition you get. And somehow, it's enough. Now it's time to rise. You ease yourself off the cushion, legs momentarily unsure of themselves. You stretch again, less ceremonially this time, more like a lazy cat. You gather your sleeves, step lightly toward the threshold, and the room lets you go. There's no grand farewell. No applause. Just that lingering scent of cedar and tea. That sense of being cradled, however briefly, by something much older than you. One last detail before you leave. As you pass the inner garden path, you glance at the stone basin near the entrance. Tsukubai, it's called. A low water basin used for symbolic cleansing before tea. You hadn't noticed it earlier, likely because you were too busy wondering where to sit, how to bow, whether you looked out of place. But now, it's the last thing you see, a trickle of water. A hollowed bamboo scoop resting across the top. A droplet falling from a spout every few seconds, merging into the pool below. It's as if time itself were collecting there, silently. You bow once more, or not to anyone, just to the moment, and then you step out into the hallway, changed in ways you can't quite name. The tatami softens under your feet with each step down the hallway, the soles of your socks whispering against the weave. You move more slowly now, not from fatigue, though that's definitely present, but from a kind of dreamy caution, like you're trying not to wake something. Yourself, maybe. You follow the dim ambient glow as it leads you toward the rear wing of the inn. Past shōji doors and wooden beams that creak in that way old places do, like they're always stretching after a nap. The light shifts as you turn a corner, warmer now, flickering. Candlelight, you guess, and just ahead, a new room. This one less refined, more casual. The okami awaits you once more, standing beside a low table with cushions scattered in an irregular, welcoming pattern. She gestures wordlessly for you to enter, her hands open, palms down. A subtle "this way, please," but the kind that doesn't rush you. You duck slightly beneath the lintel and step inside. The air in this room is different, smokier, infused with a blend of sandalwood and citrus ash. Not overpowering, but enough to make you feel like you've just passed into the quiet backstage of a play. Here's where it gets interesting. See, once the formal tea ceremony concluded in many Edo-era inns, the after-ceremony began, a casual, transitional gathering known as nokai banashi. A place for conversation, small snacks, maybe a shared drink, or, get this, a bit of very low-stakes gossip. It was the inn's way of easing guests from contemplative solitude back into the social world. Like reintroducing a zoo animal to the wild, but with more rice crackers. You sit, no formal kneeling this time. No prescribed posture. You just let gravity win and flop into a cushion, one leg lazily folded, the other stretched. No one bats an eye. If anything, this is the point. The table is already set. Not like a banquet, more like a thoughtful snack drawer exploded neatly onto lacquerware trays. There's dried persimmon, tiny rice cakes with sea salt flecks, slices of pickled daikon fanned out in a perfect spiral. And the centerpiece, a small ceramic carafe of warm sake, barely steaming, now before you clutch your pearls, yes, alcohol. But not forgetting sloshed. In the Edo period, it was common to offer a modest pour of sake after a tea ceremony, especially for overnight guests. The idea wasn't intoxication, it was ritual contrast. You just had bitter green tea, followed by silence and stillness. Now, you're invited to balance it with a touch of sweetness. Warmth and chatter, balance, again. It's a theme, remember, you accept the cup offered to you. It's nothing fancy, just an ochoko, a tiny porcelain thing that barely holds 2 sips. That's the point. You're not slamming shots. You're sipping quietly, feeling the heat trickle down your throat and settle behind your ribs like a friendly ghost. The okami pours for you, and then, for the first time all evening, sits beside you. Her presence is different now. Less ceremonial host, more kindly neighbor. Her sleeves are rolled slightly, her obi tied more loosely. She's done with her duties, and now she just wants to sit. She asks how you found the tea. You answer. She nods. Maybe she smiles. The exchange is simple, unremarkable, and yet, you feel your shoulders fall a little further from your ears. You ask her about the scroll. She tells you it's rotated weekly, sometimes daily, depending on who passes through. You wonder aloud if any of the past guests have ever written something truly ridiculous in the calligraphy scrolls. Oh yes, she says. And you swear, her eyes twinkle just a bit. One guest once wrote only the character for cat 8 times in a row. Apparently, he had been particularly taken with a kitten he saw in the garden. You both laugh softly. This is what the Nokai Banashi was for. Not deep philosophy. Not grand pronouncements. Just lightness after gravity. Like dessert after medicine. The Edo inns understood the emotional arc of a guest's experience better than most modern resorts do. Oh, and here's a fringe tidbit for you. Some particularly creative inns used this after tea time to test out entertainment acts. Traveling performers, storytellers, or shamisen players would be invited into this exact space, performing not on a stage, but in a whisper, just for the sake of ambient delight. Not every guest liked it. Some grumbled it ruined the peaceful mood. Others thought it made the transition back to reality gentler. Historians still debate how common these performances were. Some say they were rare treats for honored guests. Others claim it was more widespread, a kind of proto-cabaret tea house. The truth, like most history, probably lies somewhere between dusty records and half-remembered anecdotes, but tonight, you're not getting a performer. Just this warm room, this little spread of treats, and the soft flicker of candlelight dancing across the low table. The okami offers you one more pour. You accept, just to be polite. It's smoother this time, either the sake has warmed, or you have. She doesn't stay long. Hosts never do. Her role here is to guide, not linger. As she rises and bows a final time, she leaves behind a small folded paper at the edge of the tray. You pick it up. It's a tanzaku, a short vertical poem slip. It reads, "The kettle has cooled, but the warmth still lingers near. In silence, I hear." You hold it for a moment. Then you tuck it into your sleeve like a lucky charm. The silence that follows is not empty. It's full of endings. Soft, undramatic ones. The candle burns low. The room sighs. You are once again alone. But this time, it doesn't feel lonely, just complete. You let the warmth of the sake bloom quietly in your chest. It doesn't press or prod, it simply settles, like a soft inner blanket. The room is hushed now, still lit by that one flickering candle, whose light now leans toward orange. Shadows stretch longer, and somewhere in the building, wood shifts with a low, sleepy groan. The okami is gone, and no one has come to fill her place. That's by design. This part, the solitude that follows the post-tea relaxation, is not a gap in the evening. It is the evening. It's the invitation to drift inward. The Edo inns knew how to pace you, how to ease you toward rest without you realizing it. You're not being ushered anywhere anymore. You're just here, still, but that stillness is different now from the one in the tea room. Then, you were watchful, poised, participating in a structure you didn't design. Now, the stillness is yours. It belongs to you. Your eyes drift around the room again, taking in the quiet clutter of things left behind. A single fan on the floor, half folded. A tray with one last rice cracker. The cup you forgot to finish. Even the shadows look softer now, as if they've curled up to nap around your feet, and that's when you hear it. Music, not close, distant, filtered through layers of wall and time. A shamisen, most likely, the three-stringed lute of Japan's Edo past. Its notes rise and fall like they're chasing each other through fog. Plucked lightly, not for performance but as practice, or perhaps boredom. A servant's lullaby to themselves. No audience needed, you lean toward the sound without meaning to. Not physically, just in awareness. It's the kind of thing you'd miss if you were speaking, or standing, or thinking too hard. But right now, you're doing none of those. This is what Edo inns offered that modern hotels rarely do: curated silence. Not emptiness. Not dead space. But a sequence of moments so gently arranged that your own thoughts begin to feel welcomed. The music fades, or maybe your awareness of it does. Either way, it leaves behind a new sense of depth. You are now completely in the space between ritual and sleep. The part of the night where memory starts to blur a little. You stretch, slow and lazy, like you've been here 100 times. Then a knock, soft, rhythmic. It's not a question, just a notification. The door slides open a few inches, and a different attendant bows in, his expression unreadable in the candlelight. He gestures toward the hallway. Your futon has been prepared. You rise, no rush, and follow him. The corridor has changed again. It always does. The deeper into night you go, the more the inn reveals its quiet spine. Lamps are dimmer. Doors are closed. Only the faintest smells remain: charred cypress, leftover steam, a hint of plum vinegar from the kitchen. You are shown into a small sleeping chamber. Sparse, but not cold. The futon has been laid on the floor, perfectly squared. The blanket is cotton-filled and patterned faintly with cranes, flying low, and this is the detail you didn't expect: the pillow is filled with buckwheat hulls. Firm, oddly textured, and cool to the touch. It crackles softly when you lie back. This is what you came for. You slide under the blanket, feeling the crispness of the linen wrap around your legs. You breathe in deeply, and for a moment, your exhale seems to join the size of the inn itself. Now, let's add the quirky bit, because even ancient peace had its oddities. Some inns in the Edo period, particularly those near mountain roads or hot springs, had bedtime rituals that would feel downright bizarre today. Like this one, guests were often provided with a small wooden plaque to place outside their room with a simple hand-painted symbol: a rabbit, a fan, a wheel. Why? To indicate their preferred wake-up time. Yep. Instead of shouting through the hallways or ringing bells, the innkeeper would check each plaque at sunrise and gently nudge guests awake at their desired hour. You, the tired traveler, might request a late start with a fan symbol, or an early one with a rabbit. No digital alarm needed. Just pictograms and courtesy. Historians still debate exactly how widespread this system was. Some claim it was only used in elite guest houses catering to daimyo and artists. Others suggest it trickled down to mid-range inns, especially those on the Tokaido Road. Either way, it was a charming workaround for the basic human need to not be startled out of your dreams. Back in your futon, you chuckle softly at the idea. If only you could hang a little wheel plaque outside your apartment door now. No interruptions until coffee has entered bloodstream. The attendant bows one last time before departing. As he slides the door closed, the light from the hallway slices across the floor like a sword, then vanishes, and you are left in the hush, no ceiling light. Just the dim orange halo of a candle in a wall nook. The walls breathe. The floor creaks once, like it's tucking you in. Even now, as the night grows late, the inn does not become less present. It becomes more itself. Less host, more dream architecture. Designed not just to shelter your body, but to cradle your transition from wake to sleep. And here you are, nestled between tatami and wood, wrapped in layers of quietness. The tea is long gone. The sweets are crumbs. The sake is a fading warmth behind your ribs, and still, everything feels just beginning. Time slips differently now. You're not quite asleep, but not entirely awake. The futon is warm around your shoulders, the pillow faintly rustling beneath your head with every subtle shift. And somewhere, just outside the thin shōji walls, the world continues in slow motion. You listen. There's a sound you can't place at first, soft, repetitive, like silk brushing across wood. Then you realize it's someone sweeping. Not in a rush, not to clean up a mess. Just part of the nightly rhythm of the inn. The gentle maintenance of a world that keeps itself tidy in the margins of time. You don't open your eyes. You don't need to. That sweeping sound? That's not just cleaning. It's a lullaby. For centuries, inns in Edo, Japan maintained a quiet ethos of care that extended long after their guests had closed their eyes. Floors were gently swept, paper lanterns checked for tears, futons realigned just so. It was part necessity, part reverence. The building was alive, and it required tending, and yes, this is the part where it gets weird again. Some Edo-era inns had a superstition. They believed the inn itself had a spirit. Not like a ghost. Not a haunting. More like a protective presence. A kami, if you want the old word. The inn's guardian. It wasn't worshipped exactly, but it was respected. You didn't slam doors. You didn't spill tea and ignore it. You didn't let the bath water boil too long. Because if you upset the inn, your sleep might be troubled, so the caretakers, the okami and her staff, didn't just clean. They soothed. They moved through the building like librarians with incense, maintaining a harmony that extended beyond walls and windows. You lie there, drifting, and think about this spirit. If this inn has one, and it surely does, you suspect it's pleased with tonight. You've bowed, sat, sipped, sighed, and finally surrendered. You've joined the rhythm rather than resisted it. Now, a door slides open somewhere. Footsteps. Then water. Not splashing, just trickling. A late-night bath, maybe. Some guests take their soak after everything else. When the air is cool and the steam can rise freely into the dark, you can smell it now, hinoki wood and mineral salts. The kind of scent that doesn't wake you but follows you into your dreams, and then, something more unexpected, laughter, not loud. Not wild. Just a quiet giggle. Two voices, maybe more. Tucked away behind a paper wall, sharing something small and funny, maybe over a bowl of midnight pickles, maybe just remembering a joke from earlier in the journey. You'll never know, but the sound warms you. It says life is still happening. Quietly. Kindly. With no need for your participation. You are free to drift. The futon shifts slightly as you reposition, one hand curling gently beneath your cheek. You wonder, briefly, how many others have slept in this very spot. Hundreds? Thousands, and here's the historical reality check, guest turnover in busy Edo-era inns could be shockingly fast. Especially along travel corridors like the Tokaido Road, some inns might host dozens of travelers per night. The rooms were clean between guests, of course, but the structures themselves carried a kind of narrative residue. A layering of energy. Not exactly ghosts, but certainly stories. A wandering poet once slept here. A low-ranking samurai. Perhaps. A merchant counting coins in his dreams. You are one more body in the long slow stream of sleepers passing through, and now we get to something unexpected, bedding maintenance. Sounds boring, right, but no. Because here's where the quirks shine again. Some higher-end inns in the Edo period were known to sun their futons daily, literally hauling them out onto balconies or courtyards to soak up fresh sunlight. The smell of fresh sun-warmed cotton? That was the gold standard. Guests even commented on it in travel diaries. The bedding smelled of clean wind, one wrote. Can you imagine a Yelp review starting that way? The good inns, ones like this one, knew that sleep wasn't an afterthought. It was the destination. You snuggle deeper, finding that perfect pocket of coolness near your collarbone, the one that hasn't yet been warmed by your body heat. It's magic. And fleeting. So you savor it, another creak in the hallway. Then silence. Then silence again. You know the difference now. One kind of silence has tension in it. The kind that demands you fill it with noise. The other kind, the kind this inn offers, is the opposite. A silence so complete it frees you from thought. It doesn't require anything from you. It just holds you, like a still pond reflecting moonlight, and maybe there is moonlight. You can't tell, because your eyes are closed. But you feel it, somehow. A cool glow somewhere behind the rice paper. You picture it landing in the garden, kissing the koi pond, slipping along the edges of the bamboo grove you glimpsed earlier. You haven't seen the moon tonight, and yet you're certain it's out there. Maybe the spirit of the inn walks with it, just for a while, down the back garden path. Eventually, the sweeping stops. The bath sounds cease. The hallway creaks fade into memory. All that's left is breath. Yours, and maybe the building's. You feel it in the floor, in the walls, in the soft hush of air gliding beneath the door. Not like central air. Not controlled. Just natural, flowing, like the sigh of an old tree. And it hits you, gently, how little you've spoken tonight. Just a few words to the okami. A handful of answers. Nothing performative. Nothing rehearsed. There's peace in that, too. You start to drift. Your last thought before sleep takes you is oddly mundane. What will breakfast be? That, too, is a ritual. A gentle return. But that's for later. Right now, the tea has ended, the night has deepened, and your thoughts are nothing more than falling leaves. Sleep arrives like a tide. Sleep doesn't come with a grand entrance, it just seeps in. Like steam through cedar slats, like ink into rice paper. One moment you're thinking about breakfast, and the next, you're floating somewhere between dreams and tatami. You stir just slightly, maybe hours later, maybe only minutes. It's hard to tell. Time's dissolved now, trickling like the last drop of tea from a long empty pot. The room hasn't changed. It's still cocooned in the darkness that only comes when paper walls are sealed and every lamp has gone cold. No moonlight. No music. Not even the soft sweep of brooms. Just the ambient hush of a world finally, truly asleep, except. Not entirely. There's a sound, a faint scuff. Then another. Someone padding barefoot through the hallway. Quiet as moss. They pause outside your door, but don't knock. You hear the soft shuffle of fabric, the brushing of a sleeve against wood. A pause. Then footsteps continue down the corridor, fading into nothing. You wonder who it was. A servant making final rounds? Another guest unable to sleep? Maybe even, if you're feeling poetic, a night-walking spirit, doing one last check on the humans before dawn begins its slow glow. You smile at the thought, then roll slightly in your futon. The fabric rustles. Your toes find the edge of the blanket and nudge it back into place. Everything here is soundless choreography. Even in your sleepiest state, you've internalized the rhythm of the place, and here's a little-known fact to make this moment even cozier. During the Edo period, inns in colder regions often placed small ceramic pots of heated charcoal beneath wooden floorboards or beneath low tables, hibachi, to keep guests warm. Sometimes these were nestled beneath bed platforms or even kept burning in clay-lined boxes beside the futons. The idea was that heat should linger subtly, not blast in. You wouldn't feel hot, just comforted, as if the very floor approved of your existence. You can imagine it now. Beneath you, somewhere unseen, the residual heat of a hibachi glows faintly. Enough to warm the tatami. Not enough to threaten. The safety of embers. The comfort of tradition. You breathe in, and there's still a trace of cypress in the air. Maybe even a lingering sweetness, rice steam or plum syrup. Everything smells of time. Your mind drifts now, unbidden, into memory. You think of how the inn welcomed you. How the okami bowed without hurry. How your shoes disappeared the moment you stepped inside. How the tea arrived in silence, as if summoned by thought alone. You remember the sweets, those perfect little confections that crumbled like sugared clouds. You remember laughing softly to yourself when the attendant placed a second cushion just so, in case your back grew tired. All of it still rests here with you, laid like blankets. Not gone. Just settled, and yet, the building isn't static. It's changing again. You can feel it. There's a current now, subtle but present. A hint of movement behind the walls. Perhaps the kitchen staff is waking. Preparing rice. Heating miso. Arranging fish on narrow trays. Their work begins before sunrise, because by the time guests are ready to stir, everything must already be perfect. You hear a faint metallic clink. Then the thunk of a knife on wood. Someone is chopping. Gently. Rhythmically. Not with urgency, but with mastery. The inn, it seems, never truly sleeps. It just shifts roles. Like a play that continues behind the curtain even when the audience has turned away. And that brings us to another fringe detail, one of those odd little quirks you only find buried in travel logs and half-forgotten handbooks. Some Edo inns were so committed to morning hospitality that they custom-crafted menu poems for their first-time guests. That's right, haiku menus. Instead of writing rice with pickled plum, they'd leave a folded slip of paper beside your morning tray, red fruit on soft grain, steamed curls like dawn in the bowl, traveler, eat well, cute, right, and probably maddening for those just wanting to know what's on the tray. But still, it captures something. That whimsy. That deep belief that hospitality could be more than functional. That every bite, sip, and sigh could be art. You shift again, eyelids fluttering. Part of you wants to rise and peek through the shōji. Watch the kitchen in its quiet glory. Smell the broth before it's poured. But you stay still. Not because you're too tired. Because you understand now, this isn't your part in the play. You're the dreamer, you've been given a role, and it's precious. You're the honored guest, the drifting spirit with a warm belly and quiet thoughts. Your job is to rest. To absorb. To remember, and the inn will do the rest. This moment, this thin veil before morning, is when the inn glows brightest for those who know how to feel it. Not to see, but to sense. It's when the history behind the walls speaks clearest. Not in words. Not in ghost stories or loud proclamations. But in the warmth of the floor. In the memory of your final tea. In the shared silence of generations who've slept exactly where you're sleeping now. You shift your fingers, brushing the edge of the futon cover. It feels like silk. Or maybe it just remembers silk. Your body is heavier now. Breath slower. The kitchen sounds fade again. Maybe the rice is done. Maybe someone's slicing scallions into perfect green slivers. You don't know. And for once, you don't want to. You're not drifting anymore. You're floating, held quietly by a building that remembers more dreams than it does footsteps. It begins with birdsong. Not the full cacophony of daylight, but the tentative chirp of one bold feathered scout. A single note that slips through the paper screens and lands gently in your ear, nudging your thoughts like a tap on the shoulder. You're not fully awake. Not yet. The futon has mold to your shape. Your limbs are warm and heavy, your thoughts softened like mochi left too long in the sun. But the world is stirring. Slowly. Respectfully. As if the inn itself has peeked in and whispered, no rush, but the day's beginning. You remain still. Let it come. Another bird joins in. Then another. You can hear faint footsteps outside your room, wooden soles tapping softly against the polished floors. The attendants are moving, but again, there's no urgency. Just that same smooth rhythm you've come to expect. If the Edo era taught anything about service, it's that calm is contagious. This inn doesn't wake you with a knock. It invites you to return. Like a tide bringing your boat gently to shore, the scent of breakfast reaches you first, subtle, savory, and layered with care. There's rice steaming, of course. A hint of grilled fish. Possibly tamagoyaki, that impossibly fluffy, sweet omelette made from eggs and whisper-level magic. And miso. Always miso. The broth that says, welcome back to the waking world. You made it. Still, you linger, eyes still closed. You imagine the tray being prepared for you, small ceramic dishes. Each one shaped just slightly imperfectly, because perfection would be too cold. A pair of chopsticks resting neatly on a folded washi napkin. Perhaps a pickled plum in a lacquered bowl, red and glossy like a sleepy sunrise. And here's a curious historical note for you. Some inns offered guests a choice of breakfast style, one more filling for those continuing their journey on foot, and one lighter for those staying put another night. Thoughtful, right? Not every establishment did this, of course. Only the really attentive ones. The kind that remembered not just your name, but your posture, your appetite, your preference for soft versus firm tofu, a rooster crows somewhere in the distance. Not intrusive. Just a checkpoint in time, you slowly open your eyes. The room is still dim, but daylight filters through the shōji in gauzy slices. The paper glows with the promise of sky. Somewhere behind it, the garden is no doubt glistening with dew. Bamboo stalks will be catching tiny droplets, and koi, if there are koi, will be pushing lazy circles through the pond. You sit up slowly, futon creasing beneath you. The cotton cover falls to your lap like a petal drifting to earth. Your kimono robe, folded beside you, waits patiently. No one's rushing you, but you know the bath has already been drawn. Yes, that's right. This inn offers ACU, morning baths. Not mandatory, but gently encouraged. You can already hear the water, a low splash, a ripple, a tiny echo in the wooden hall. The tub will be hot but not scalding. The steam laced with citrus rind or ginger root. Just enough to wake your bones without shocking them. You rise and move barefoot to the hallway, sliding the door quietly behind you. The wood is cool beneath your feet, but not cold. Someone's already walked this way, warming the path with their steps. Maybe the same attendant who brought your tea last night. Or someone new. You'll never know, and that's okay. Because here's another sweet quirk, in many Edo-era inns, guests never learned the names of their attendants. It was considered polite, even elegant, to keep service anonymous. The staff weren't invisible, but they were gentle. They floated in and out like helpful shadows. The care was intimate, but never invasive. Like an art form with no need for applause, you reach the bath. It's not a huge one, just a cedar tub tucked behind a screen, sunlight pouring in from a high slatted window. The water steams softly, and the wooden rim is warm to the touch. You breathe in. It smells like yesterday and tomorrow all at once. You ease in, the water wraps around you. Not a splash. Just the quiet bloom of heat around skin. And in that moment, you understand why the morning bath was such a staple in Edo inns. Not just for cleanliness, but for continuity. To cleanse away dreams and re-enter the world. Gently. Gratefully, you soak. You breathe. You don't think, and while you do, the inn prepares your tray. Here's something funny. Breakfast etiquette in the Edo era was a finely balanced dance. If you arrived too early, it suggested impatience. Too late? Laziness. The sweet spot was just after the hour of the rabbit, around 6 to 7 a.m., when the morning light was soft and the food still warm from the hearth. Some guests made it into a ritual, watching the sun hit a specific bamboo stalk before rising to eat. You're right on time. By the time you've dried and dressed, your meal is waiting in your room. You didn't hear them place it there, of course you didn't. But it's perfect. Each dish a tiny canvas. The rice plump and glistening. The pickles arranged like colored tiles. The grilled mackerel still steaming at the edges. There's no rush. You take your time, one bite, then another. A sip of broth. A pause to gaze at the glowing paper walls. You're not just eating, you're rejoining. Re-entering your body. Returning to the world, one slow flavor at a time. And here's your fringe detail for the morning. In some inns, particularly those near artistic hubs, breakfast trays would include not just food, but tiny handwritten poems or single-stroke calligraphy meant to spark thought or simply offer beauty. Imagine unrolling your napkin and finding a brush-painted image of a crane, or the kanji for patience. You finish eating. Not with a sigh, but with a smile. You're full, but not heavy, warmed, but not sluggish, ready, but not rushed. The tray is cleared away, again, silently. And the okami appears once more, bowing gently, checking in not with words, but with eyes. You bow back. There's nothing left to do now, except gather your things. Fold the robe. Slip into your sandals. Slide open the final shōji that leads to the outside. The inn has served you completely, and done so invisibly. You step into the morning, and it greets you like an old friend. The path from the inn winds gently downhill, and each footstep sinks softly into the morning. It's not loud. Not eager. Just quietly certain, like the ink strokes of a practiced brush. You glance back once. The inn sits behind you, wooden, weathered, eternal. Steam curls from a hidden bathhouse vent. A single Noren curtain flutters at the entrance like a yawn. You half expect it to whisper a farewell. You bow slightly, out of habit more than obligation. A parting thank you to the structure that held your dreams. And then you walk on, the gravel path crunching faintly beneath your sandals. As you make your way toward the town road, you notice how much sharper your senses feel now. That morning bath, the quiet meal, the unspoken hospitality, all of it has tuned you like an old shamisen. You're not just awake, you're attuned. The air tastes like cedar and charcoal. The leaves rustle in that very specific Edo-era way that makes you think they've been doing it for centuries. And up ahead, what's this? A small gathering outside another inn. Travelers with bedhead and belongings bundled in furoshiki cloths. One rubs sleep from their eyes while another sips from a flask, probably cold tea or early sake. No judgment. Edo mornings were built on contradictions. You pause near a small stone bridge. A tea house across the way is already preparing for the day. A young attendant, barely more than a teenager, sets out low stools and wipes them down with slow, circular motions. Inside, a kettle is just starting to hiss. And you know what that means, another tea ceremony. Another rhythm. Another moment in the great loop. And here's your quirky tidbit: some tea houses during the Edo period operated as early as 4 a.m., particularly those near highway checkpoints. Travelers eager to beat the heat, or the crowds, would stop in for a fast infusion of tea, served strong and bitter to shock the senses awake. These places were a bit more rugged than the refined Chaja-style tea rooms. Think caffeine dens with etiquette. Still, even the roughest of these establishments followed one sacred rule: never serve tea without a clean cloth nearby. The cloth, humble as it was, symbolized purity. A dirty one was not just gross, it was practically blasphemy. You keep walking down narrow streets where shopkeepers roll up bamboo blinds and sweep out dust with soft-bristled brooms. A fishmonger tosses a pail of rinse water into the gutter. The splash echoes off wood and stone. Nothing fancy here, just the economy of motion born from repetition, and just ahead, tucked beside a shrine wall, you spot a familiar sight: a lone traveler squatting beside a low wall, preparing his own tea. Yes, that's right, not everyone had the luxury of staying at inns with full tea service. Some carried their own compact kits: a folding brazier, a lidded tin for matcha, and a small ceramic bowl. With a little effort and a little fire, you could bring a piece of ceremony with you. No matter how far you wandered, you watch as he pours hot water over the powder, then whisks it with care, using an old but well-maintained chasen. No chatter. No distraction. Just the sound of the froth blooming, and it makes you think, wasn't that the heart of it all? Whether it was a grand inn with flower arrangements and brushed calligraphy, or a roadside nook with a kettle and a prayer, it was always about intention. The daily tea ceremony was never just tea. It was how you began, how you centered, how you reminded yourself, I'm here. I'm breathing. I'm part of this. Now, as you move deeper into town, past lantern shops and paper merchants, you start to notice more signs of life. Children chasing each other between stalls. A cat curled on a roof tile, licking its paw like royalty. A man unloading bundles of firewood from a cart, humming a tune that no doubt predates the Tokugawa shogunate. And there it is again, the rhythm you've been living in since you stepped foot into that inn. The unspoken choreography of Edo mornings. You spot another inn, slightly more modest than yours, with its entrance curtain billowing like a slow sigh. A woman emerges, tightening her obi and looking out over the waking town. For a moment, your eyes meet. And even though you're strangers, there's a shared understanding there. You've both been hosted by the same invisible hands. You keep moving. Now here's an open scholarly debate for your collection. Historians still discuss to what extent these daily tea rituals, especially in non-samurai households, were spiritual versus social. Was it a meditative anchor, or just something polite to do before rice? The records are patchy. The answer probably varies. But if you ask anyone who lived it, they'd likely say both, because, like you've seen, the magic isn't in the label. It's in the moment. By now, the town has fully woken, merchants open shutters. A group of monks passes by, their alms bowls wrapped in cloth. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell sounds. Not to summon, but to signal, it's time, and yet. You pause one last time at a roadside bench. A tea stall, unassuming, offers simple matcha with none of the frills. You sit. The woman behind the counter nods, wordless, and begins to prepare your cup. No fanfare. No ceremony, and yet, as she pours the water, as she folds the cloth, as she stirs and places the bowl before you, it feels sacred. You lift the bowl, sip, and close your eyes. There it is again. That warmth, that quiet, that feeling like you're being remembered by the day itself. You stand at the threshold of the inn's garden one last time, the sky now awash of lavender and rose. The paper lanterns within the tea room glow like distant stars, their light softening the silhouettes of mossy stones and bamboo groves. You inhale deeply, tasting that faint swirl of pine smoke and dew, and you realize this moment is both an ending and a beginning. You're here to witness the gentle farewell of a ceremony that never truly ends. It unfolds into the twilight. A single attendant emerges, carrying a final tray, a tiny porcelain cup of cool tea-infused water and a sprig of dried mint. You accept them without words. The water clears your palate, the mint's aroma teases at memory. Mainstream tea manuals from the Edo period note that offering this cooled infusion was customary to signal closure while still honoring the guest's presence. It's the last whisper of flavor, the bridge between ritual and routine. You lift the water cup, swirling its contents with precision born of practice. The motion feels familiar, another bow, another pause, yet it carries the weight of every subtle gesture you've learned tonight. You sip. The mint's cool edge grazes your tongue, leaving a crispness that balances the ceremony's earlier warmth. You release a long exhale and lower the cup to the tray. The attendant steps back, folding his hands before his kimono. His eyes meet yours for an instant, no fanfare. No lingering salute, just a quiet nod that says, "Our time together has been honored." You bow, letting the motion ripple through your spine and settle in your shoulders. Behind you, the kakimono scroll still reads Twilight's farewell in bold, flowing strokes. You study the brushwork, imagining the artist's hand slowing with the light. A quirky tidbit, some Edo-era calligraphers would intentionally use ink mixed with a dash of sake during evening sessions, believing the alcohol's fluidity enhanced their strokes under dim lamplight. You can't help but smile at the thought of an inkwell spiked with rice wine. You turn back to the garden path. Lanterns line the stones, their glow flickering in the gentle breeze. The shishiodoshi water clock clicks in measured intervals, fill, tip, thunk, a metronome for your steps as you walk away. Each click marks a heartbeat pulse, reminding you that the ceremony's calm isn't confined to the tea room, it follows you into the world. As you move, the lantern's light casts dancing shadows on the inn's wooden facade. You trace the grain of the timbers, aware that these beams have witnessed countless farewells. Historians still debate whether the nightly extinguishing of lanterns in Edo inns was purely practical or carried symbolic weight. Some argue it represented the host's final offering of light to the guest spirit, others see it as mere economy. Either way, you feel the gravity of that darkening ritual settle around you. You pause at the gate. The attendant has retreated, only you and the night remain. You lift your gaze to the sky, now freckled with early stars. The air cools on your skin, carrying the promise of rest. You take a final breath and exhale all the lingering tension in your chest. You step onto the gravel path beyond the inn, the stones crunching beneath your sandals in a sound that feels like punctuation. No trumpets. No applause. Just the hushed harmony of earth and night. You carry the ceremony inside you with a hush of shōji, the weight of the chorin, the taste of matcha and mint, the steady click of water. And as you walk into the darkness, you realize that calm is not a place you leave behind, it's a companion you take with you. And now, wind down and let the ceremony's echo fade into gentle dreams. The world beyond the inn's gate is muted, as if draped in soft silks. You let your steps grow slower, each footfall a measured whisper. The stars overhead glimmer like lanterns in the sky, guiding you with their distant calm. Your breath rises and falls in silent waves, rocking you toward rest. You remember the hush of cedar-scented hallways, the faint murmur of water against stone, the delicate weight of a tea bowl cradled in your hands. In this quiet corridor between wakefulness and sleep, time loosens its grip, your mind settles, no longer juggling tasks or to-do lists. Instead, it hovers in the space between thoughts, where soft shadows dance and the only sound is your own heartbeat. You picture the inn's gardens, now emptied of guests, their lanterns extinguished, their moss cool and receptive. You imagine sitting there one final time, letting the darkness speak its gentle truths. And as your eyelids grow heavy, you welcome surrender. You allow the memory of steam rising from a fresh bowl of matcha, the taste of mint, the warmth of steamed rice, and the hush of whispered bows to guide you deeper. Each recollection is a lullaby, wrapping you in layers of serenity. In this moment, you carry the ceremony within, its pacing, its care, its invitation to simply be. Its lessons weave through your dreams, teaching you that every step, no matter how small, can be intentional. Every breath can be a bow. And every ending, like every sunset, is but a promise of tomorrow's dawn.